Hello, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on SpiraPlan, the top productivity benefits of SpiraPlan. Today's webinar will be talking about some of the features that if you are a SpiraTest or SpiraTeam customer and you thought about upgrading to SpiraPlan, we're going to be talking about some of the features that you can look forward to if you make the jump and upgrade. If you're also someone looking at our products at the first time, you can also learn about some of the project and program and risk management features that are in SpiraPlan. During the webinar, we're going to be talking about the following things. First of all, we'll introduce the program and portfolio management features in the latest version of SpiraPlan. We'll look at some of the enhanced Agile planning boards that we have. We'll look at the risk management functionality. We'll then specifically talk about how you can scale Agile using SpiraPlan. We're going to actually look at both SAFe and the Nexus models of scaling Agile. We'll then show you how easy it is to upgrade both from SpiraTest and SpiraTeam to SpiraPlan, but also which versions, and also talk about a couple of gotchas we had when people have upgraded. Then we'll go in from the PowerPoint into a live application demo, and after that will be Q&A. During the talk, if you want to write your questions in the Q&A box, you can do that at any time. I will be doing the questions and answers at the end of the talk, but feel free to write them at any time. Everyone will be on mute, and when we get to the Q&A, I'll be reading out everyone's answers for the recording. So again, my name is Adam Sandman. Thanks again. It's a pleasure to have you with me today, and let's get started. So first of all, SpiraPlan introduces a lot of new functionality around program and portfolio management. Also, there are some additional planning features that are available beyond just the project and portfolio management around tasks and releases, and I'll be showing you those as well. So first of all, when we talk about program and portfolio management, what are we actually speaking with? Well, this is a slide from a deck we did about a year and a half ago now, where we actually talked to various people about what we were proposing, and this was the concept. So within SpiraTest and SpiraTeam, you've always had the ability to manage products, which we used to call projects till relatively recently, and you can group those projects or products into what we call a program. And then what we realize is on very large installations, you may have hundreds or thousands of projects and programs, and it gets very unwieldy to manage them. What you really want to be able to do is group them together into another higher level entity and be able to report on them and track progress at a higher level. And so we've created a new artifact or new workspace called a portfolio. And you can then have multiple of your existing programs grouped together into this portfolio. The other thing we realize is that SpiraTest and SpiraTeam historically, and even SpiraPlan, to be honest, historically have been very good at letting you manage products and projects. And there is some functionality there, particularly in the SpiraPlan edition around program management, but we don't really have a good way of seeing everything that's going on in the whole system. There's no enterprise view. So when we decided to build out the portfolio views, we realized that we also needed a high level view, which we call the enterprise view. So in the latest version of SpiraPlan, you can now see a top-down enterprise view broken down by portfolio, broken down by program, broken down by product. Inside each product, you can also have releases, minor releases, and sprints, just as you have today. So it gives you a very flexible hierarchy to work with. Having an enterprise view, having a portfolio and a program is good, is well enough, but the question is, what do you do with that? So one of the other things we realize is that if you've looked at SpiraTeam or Test, in each of the projects and products, we have various measures of progress and status. And we realize that we need to have something a little bit simpler as we start to roll things up the hierarchy. So we introduced a new concept of progress. And so if you've looked at the tool, you remember we have a release has a requirements test coverage associated with it, and it has a task progress. For every given release in the system, you can see what is my test coverage, how many tests passed, failed, and you can see the number of tasks that are done, behind schedule, on schedule. But there wasn't an easy way to see at a release level, and certainly not at the product level, and definitely not at a program or portfolio level, there wasn't a way to get a single measure of progress. So we decided what we needed really to help provide functionality for the project managers and the program managers was a simple view of progress, because whereas a QA manager might be looking at the the test cases, what's passed, what's failed, and the person in charge of development might be looking at the tasks, what's on track, what's behind, what's ahead of schedule. As a project and program managers, you really want to know, how done am I? Am I 60% done, 30% done? And that's something we've now added for the first time. And that single measure of doneness of progress is based on requirements completion, because we realize that for a requirement to be fully done, developed and tested and then marked as closed and completed, it has to have gone through all the testing, and also all the tasks need to be completed. So in fact, it encapsulates all the other metrics together. So we've now introduced this new metric, percentage complete, based on requirements, and we now have it at the product level. We also roll it up to the program level, and to the portfolio level, and to the enterprise level. And then we also can compare that to the schedule to see, are we behind or ahead of schedule based on the percentage complete relative to the schedule that it's under. And that's why you'll see in this diagram, you have some of those products that are red, some of those portfolios that are red, others that are green. And this was a concept we proposed, as I said, about 18 months ago as a new functionality we want to introduce. That functionality has been out for a couple of months now as part of SpiraPlan 6.5, and this is what it looks like. I will be showing it to you in the live application, so don't worry, this is just a screenshot I grabbed. But basically, you can now see the percentage complete of the overall enterprise, in this case 4%, and you can see on the right-hand side there is the schedule, and there is the requirements completion, and the percentage completion on the right-hand side shows you of my different portfolios in this particular view, how done are they? Are they, in this case, 23% done, and how far along in the schedule are we? In this case, I have 23% of my requirements done, but only consume 1% of my scheduled time. So that looks pretty good. Or if you look at the default portfolio at the bottom, I've got nothing done, and I'm actually over my schedule. So that looks bad. That's why it's red. So you can see those two aspects: the schedule and the completion, the requirements completion. If you drill down further, we can go down to portfolios views, we can go down to program views. I'll be showing you that live in the application, but this is what it looks like at a program level. You can see we have a program, we have 3 different products within that program, and you can see the same thing: percentage complete and the schedule. Now, we've also got some other widgets in these dashboards. We've got some additional widgets around testing. We've got some widgets around risk management, which we'll see, and we'll talk about risk management in a minute separately. But we do have lots of information at a product and program level. It's not just the progress. But this is one of the key things, though, was taking that overall sense of completion and rolling it up the hierarchy. We've also introduced a new DevOps widget. So if you are using tools like Jenkins or TeamCity, Bamboo, Azure DevOps pipelines, you can now have all those different tools report back their builds into the system, and they'll pass or fail against the different releases and sprints that you have. And we can now view all of the open releases and sprints in the entire system, or at a program or a portfolio level, and you can see what's passed and what's failed. So it lets you view all of your different pipelines in one place as well. In addition to the dashboards, which I'll show you at the program and portfolio levels and the enterprise view, we also have improved some of the views directly in the system. In the release view, which at a product level, we've now added a Gantt chart view. We've also added a hierarchy view of releases as well. So you can now see in a graphical form with the timeline and the release hierarchy and the sprints, you can see the percentage complete in a Gantt view. And this Gantt view is right now read-only. We will be making it read-write in future versions. Also, not to be left out, the task management view now has a new Gantt view as well. We'll see this live in the system. We've always had a grid view of tasks, and we also have a sort of Kanban view, and a Scrum view of tasks, where you can view the tasks by sprint and by user story. We can now also see them in a Gantt chart view if you're using it for a waterfall or hybrid project. And one nice thing is that it's the same data, whether you're looking at requirements or releases or tasks in any of the different views. They're not separate data. It's just different views of the same thing. So a task view that looks like a Gantt chart will be the same task that you see in the board, or the same thing you see in the grid. So that's some of the general enhancements around planning. We've also improved the planning board specifically. So first of all, for those customers using SpiraTest or SpiraTeam, you're familiar, particularly SpiraTeam, you'll be familiar with the planning boards. You can look at the boards at a product level. You can look at them and do a product backlog. You can look at the sprints. You can look at your releases. You can see what's planned. That's all well and good. But we also have in SpiraPlan a program backlog. So you can see all of the stories, all the functionality, everything that's planned for the entire program. You can then select each of the individual products in the program, or you can have a program-wide view, and we'll show you this live. But you can see the backlogs and manage your programs, user stories, and prioritization across all the products in the program in one place. And this is only in the SpiraPlan edition. So if you're using SpiraTest or Team, this is a good reason to upgrade. In addition, we've also added some additional views in the most recent release. We're adding in the ability to see the backlog and the release and sprint views by epic and by component. Previously, only the product backlog could see them by epic or by component. Once you looked at a release backlog or a sprint backlog, you lost that view. You couldn't group by epic or component. We've now made that consistent across the entire board. You can now view any of the, you can view by epic or by component in any of the views. So you can be looking at an all releases view, an individual release, individual sprint, or the product backlog, doesn't matter. You'll always be able to group by epic. You'll always be able to group by component. We've also added an expand all and collapse all option to make the navigation and the usability better as well. In addition to that, we've also added better support for Kanban projects. We've always had the ability to view the stories in a Kanban view by status, and you could do that at a release level, a product level, but we did not have explicit support for work in progress limits. We've now added the ability to enable WIP limits. So the WIP limits let you specify how many user stories can be in any given status in a given sprint or release. And we use this methodology you can see in front of you here to calculate that, how many are allowed based on the size of the release or size of the sprint. So if you have a 2-person sprint versus a 6-person sprint, the number of story cards allowed in each status will be essentially a multiplier of that. That way, you can have one set of configurations across your entire product, but it still scales dynamically based on the size of the sprint or size of the release. And so as an admin, you'll set this all up in the administration. And for an end user working in the boards, it looks like this. Here you can see we've got 5 statuses in our Kanban board: planned, in progress, developed, tested, and completed. And what's happened is we've exceeded the work in progress limit that we have of 1. We're only allowed to have 1 story card in progress and 1 story card in development. We're allowed to have as many as you want in tested, planned, or completed. And that was in the configuration I did. And so because we have 2 in that developed status, it exceeds the WIP limit of 1, and the whole thing goes a sort of orangey yellow color that we call the yolk color. If you move that item around and take it out of that so that you only have 1 in that board, the color goes away. So that way you're now alerted very quickly, very clearly that you've exceeded your WIP limit in that particular status. And this WIP limit is configured on a product level, so you can have it turn on for some products, off for other products, and the values you can have will vary if it's a release or a sprint and the size of this release or sprint. In addition to the planning functionality in SpiraPlan, we've also got some powerful risk management functionality. Now, obviously, risk management is a separate discipline. There are many tools out there that can do risk management, but they're usually separate tools. So one of the things we found is that a lot of people doing project management or QA or requirements management, they don't have a built-in risk management functionality, and therefore they have to use a different tool or spreadsheets in many cases to do risk management. And then you don't get that traceability. You don't get that connection to know, well, I have this risk. What does it impact? Does it impact this requirement? Does it impact the schedule for this particular release? So having it integrated gives huge benefits. So within SpiraPlan, and this is also not in SpiraTest or Team, we do have a full risk management module where you can enter different risks. You can categorize them by probability on the top, by severity or impact on the left, and we put those together, and that gives us our exposure, and that's how we can determine how bad it is. The highest exposure risk will be one that's certain and catastrophic on the top right. On the bottom left will be a negligible and rare risk. And so we put those values together, give you an exposure score, and then you can see that in the risk register. And so this dashboard has new widgets, which is the risk cube on the top and a risk register underneath. I'll show you risk management in the tool live, but you do have the ability in the system, as you can see here, to track risks. And for each of the risks you describe, you give it a type: schedule risk, business risk, financial risk. It's customizable. The status, you give it the probability and the impact. We get the exposure. And then once it's being reviewed, you then need to figure out, how do you mitigate the risk? And you do that by using the special mitigation section. That's where you will document the mitigations to fix that risk. You assign a review date, which it will alert you to if you've exceeded that and haven't actually reviewed the mitigation. And the mitigations then over time will typically reduce the exposure of the risk, reducing either the probability or the impact, depending on what the mitigation is. And we can also have comments tracked as well. So if there's things you want to discuss that aren't true mitigations, we do have the standard Spira comment system integrated as well. When you write the risk and have the mitigations, you want to usually create an action plan. You can use the tasks tab of the risk to be able to document out the action plan in a series of tasks, which may or may not tie to the mitigations. And those tasks then get added into the standard work breakdown structure for the project in SpiraPlan. So that way, when you're looking at your timelines and your Gantt chart view or your board view, all those tasks that you generate for the risk mitigation, those are going to be put into the same schedule as all these user story tasks, the oversight tasks. So you can load balance the team, and you can also make sure that all the tasks get done by a certain date. So it becomes part of your standard plan for the project. In addition to the task, you can also link that risk to other things. For example, in the associations tab here, you can see we can link this risk to a requirement. So that might be the fact that this risk impacts this requirement. You can link it to a defect or an incident or an issue. For example, this risk has just occurred. The risk is we're going to be late. Oh no, we are late. Now it's no longer a risk. It's actually happened. We now convert it into an issue. And so you can convert the risks into issues and then use the standard issue tracker to handle that. Or you might want to potentially investigate something to see if that will reduce the severity of a risk. So you might create a test case, run the test case, and as part of that testing activity, you might be reducing some of your technical risk. So there's interplay between the test cases, the requirements, the defects, and the issues, all with the risks, as well as the tasks. Another thing that's really important, of course, is to be able to configure the risk methodology. We've configured or pre-configured SpiraPlan to use the statuses and the workflow that goes with the Prince2 methodology, which is one of the standard PMI methodologies for risk management. We've also made it configurable so you can adjust the impacts, the severities, the probabilities, the types of statuses, so you can configure it to work on different approaches. So if you're going to do clinical risk management, you may have some different values than if you're doing a sort of classic PMI risk management approach. Another really important feature, of course, is audit trails. Whenever you change anything in SpiraPlan, we do have an audit trail. You can revert back. You can analyze the changes. This is true for risks as it is for anything else. The risks generate the same history entries, so do the mitigations. You can track all that in the system and have a full audit trail. So that's some of the planning functionality. That's the risk management functionality. The next thing to talk about is scaling Agile. Now, scaled Agile is a sort of a contentious topic. There's lots of different methodologies. Everyone has their famous one, and there's people who are big advocates or big detractors of this. So SpiraPlan was designed to be flexible in mind and not necessarily adhere to a specific methodology, but allow you to use different methodologies and be configurable. So we're going to look at 2 or 3 different methodologies today, but that is by no means all the ones we can integrate with. We actually have a white paper on our website. It's the Scaled Agile web paper under the solutions part of our website. If you go there, we talk about the Nexus model, which I'm going to talk about today, the SAFe model, but also other methods like Scrum of Scrums, LESS, DAD, various other methodologies. So this white paper really goes through in a lot of detail how you can use SpiraPlan on those different kinds of projects. But just to give you a bit of a flavor of that white paper, if you're using, for example, the large solution SAFe, which is an extension of what's called Essential SAFe. Essential SAFe is really a product-based approach. It's basically taking the standard Agile methodology, scaling it up for a product rather than a team. We're going to take a look at 1 degree higher than that, which is a large solution SAFe. That's when you have multiple products all working together, delivered towards a single outcome, a single solution. And if you want to use SpiraPlan to do that, here's the functionality we provide using our new project, program, and portfolio management functionality. We can tie your solution backlog into what we call the program backlog. The Agile release trains are the products. The product backlog is the product backlog. The epics, features, enablers become our different types of requirement. The teams are releases. The backlog is the release backlog, sprints and iterations. So you can see from left to right the mapping of the SAFe artifacts and SAFe methodology and names over to the SpiraPlan equivalent. And in SpiraPlan, sometimes we use a single artifact, like a requirement that has different types to map to the different safe types. Now, obviously, you can see here, there's some plan functionality listed. Right now, for a large solution safe, we can do about 70% of the large solution safe already with the latest version. We will be adding some functionality, which I'm going to talk about later on in future plans, and that will give us the ability to handle the capabilities, enablers, and program implements that we don't yet have. So the capabilities, enablers, and program increments part of SAFE, that's future functionality. But right now we can already do 70% of large solution SAFE. We can do 100% of essential SAFE already. And then the next one will be Portfolio Safe. Portfolio Safe is a different flavor where instead of having multiple products that tie together into a single solution, it's a series of separate products that you manage as a portfolio because they're part of a similar department or a singular organizational unit. They're not the same system. So you're not integrating them because you can release them at the same time. They manage together because potentially there's different value. I might want to invest in one product over another product. And as the business owner, I need to marshal my resources and invest appropriately, understand my KPIs. So it's a management framework as opposed to like a solution framework. And so when you're looking at Portfolio Safe, SpiraPlan supports all the artifacts there except strategic theme, which we'll talk about was one of our future functionalities. And so we're about 90% ready to support Portfolio Safe in the current version that we have today. So those are some of the safe methods of scaling Agile. We'll also look quickly at the Nexus model. The Nexus model is a little bit different. It's a series of different Scrum teams which have their own approach, use their own standard Scrum methodologies. And what you do with Nexus is you have a Nexus integration team, which basically it is like its own Scrum team. It basically works with the other teams and figures out the interconnection points, the stories and the functionality and the backlog that's going to be integrated across the different teams, and it makes sure that you have an integrated increment. So when you release an increment of functionality, it's not just your sprint, my sprint, their sprint, ad hoc. You come up with an integrated set of functionality that's going to be integrated together so that when you do your continuous integration, your builds, you're not just doing it on one team, another team, and then that's it. You're also having an integrated increment that's being built on an integrated pipeline and being released as such, and the Nexus integration team is responsible for that. And we have two flavors of SpiraPlan that can be, well, two ways of configuring SpiraPlan to do this. One is flavor one, which is to use our program concept as the product and use the products as the team. The second approach is to use one of our products as your product and use our individual releases as the team. There are some pros and cons as to which way to go. It depends a little bit on the permissions you need, the sharing of artifacts you need, and some of the ways you're using it. We have on our white paper that's on our website a more detailed description of the two approaches and when you should use which one. I won't go into it right now, but lots of information on our website to help you make that kind of choice. But we do support Nexus both in the product level or a program level, depending on your appropriate your needs and what's most appropriate for you. So that's an overview of SpiraPlan. I've gone through some of the planning functionality, the risk management, and also the scaling of Agile using SpiraPlan. Let's think about the next step, which would be I'm using SpiraTest, I'm using SpiraTeam, or I'm using an old version of SpiraPlan. What do I do next? So if you're using SpiraTest or Team, especially if you're using the latest version, if you're in the cloud, you're on the latest version already, version 5.4.1, sorry, 6.5.1. That's easy. All you need to do is simply purchase an upgrade license if you're on premise. We give you the license key, you put the license key in, hit the save button, and within 10 seconds, everyone's using SpiraPlan. The new functionality is available. No change is made, no reinstallation, no data migration. Just change the license key, hit the button, and away you go. For cloud licenses, it's very similar. You order from us the cloud upgrade. We make the cloud upgrade available, or you can do it self-service. If you're on a monthly plan, you can just do it yourself by changing the dropdown. It takes about a minute or two for it to update on the cloud, and then you'll be using SpiraPlan. So that's really easy. Now, if you are running SpiraPlan version 6.4 or older, or Team or Test, in fact, for that matter, some of the things I've shown you on the screens in my screenshots won't look familiar because you don't have them yet. And if you're using SpiraPlan version 6.4, the great news is you've already paid for it. It's already available to you. We provide upgrades free with SpiraPlan. So if you're on SpiraPlans, 5.4, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, or 6.4, you're missing out, and you've already paid for it. So I would totally disagree. Go get the SpiraPlan 6.5.1 installer from our website. Download it, install it. Choose the appropriate maintenance period. Our support team is here to help you out with the upgrade. Definitely something you should do. If you are using SpiraPlan 6.5, you might say, well, hold on a minute, I'm on 6.5, I've got SpiraPlan. How come I don't see some of these new views? I don't see a portfolio view, I don't see my portfolio in my drop-down, in my navigation, what's going on here? So we did find out there's one gotcha. If you log in as a system administrator user, the user that's called administrator, we automatically upgrade it to have the new portfolio viewer flag set to yes. So if you log in with that user, you'll see all the new portfolio views. If, on the other hand, you're logging in as a non-system admin user, which is what we would recommend from a security standpoint, you won't see it because that feature is not turned on by default for security. So you need to go into your user profile or the profile of the user through administration, and you need to enable the portfolio viewer flag and set it to yes, not no. Once it's set to yes, the new portfolio views will be enabled for you. And we did find a couple of our clients didn't know they had this functionality available, and they were like, well, I can't see all this stuff. What's going on? Is it a bug? And we're like, no, you just need to change this view. So definitely make sure you do that. Once you do that, it'll be good to go. One thing I should mention when we talk about portfolios, obviously when you start using it, you won't have any portfolios, you won't have some of the information. I'll talk about that when we go into the live demo, but you will need to make sure you enable those features. Once you've got those features in place, you will have to add portfolios, map your products and programs. There's a little bit of work as an admin to get things moved over so they appear the right way. But do that after you've got all this other stuff done first. So that's what we have today. Everything I'm going to show you is live in the system, but there are some future plans around portfolios and programs, particularly we'll be adding. First of all, as I mentioned, we can do about, we were 100% of safe essential. We do about 70 or so percent of large solutions safe. We do about 90% of portfolio safe. When we add this next set of functionality, we will be able to do 100% of both of those and also 100% of full safe. So what we'll be adding in our next major update from a program management standpoint is the ability to have program themes and program milestones. And what this means is instead of having just a program contains products and the products contain requirements, which is what we've got now, and that's great, we can report those all up to the program and portfolio level, we're going to allow you to create a program level theme and associate your user stories and features and epics with that theme. You'll also be able to create what's called a program milestone, like end of Q1, end of Q2, so quite a high level entity. And then all your different product releases and sprints will be able to be linked to that milestone, which means you could say end of Q1 as my milestone, I've got to have these 5 releases on these 5 products or whatever video it is done by that release. So it's a way of creating milestones across the different products and track completion. And these will tie into the capabilities, the program capabilities and features that we saw on the safe model. So with these extra features in place, we will give you full safe support across all flavors. The other thing we'll be looking at towards, this is definitely a next year thing now, will be on the schedule resource planning. We have some basic resource planning already in SpiraPlan, you've probably used it. We want to be able to add more powerful resource planning where you can specify allocation, start date, end dates, and then using the new enterprise view, as well as having the enterprise dashboard to show you the progress, you'll have an enterprise resource view so you can see where everyone is, what they're working on, when they're rolling off, when they're available. It will help to do resource planning and staffing. And that leads us on to the last piece for next year, which will be time cards and time tracking. Right now, that's what we're going to be looking to add in the future. And this will be an opt-in feature that we'll have. So if you are using the current system and you want to be able to enable time tracking, you can turn it on. If you find that's overhead, you could turn it off. So it will be an opt-in feature. So that's some of the functionality we're planning. And again, the idea is you'll be able to, in this case, to clarify the last one, it'll be a full time code where we'll store the time against each day, against that week. You can see the time card, approve it, and then it will post against the artifacts. Whereas right now, if you enter 5 hours on Monday and 5 hours on Tuesday for the same task, all we're doing is incrementing that task by 10 hours, 5 hours each day, but you don't get to see a total time view. Also, you'll be able to break it down by, say, billable, not billable, track 1, track 2, activity 1, activity 2. So it gets into much more granular level reporting. So that's some of what's planned, which means moving on, it is now time for the application demo. So that's the PowerPoint. And PowerPoint is fun. It lets you see everything, but let's go and actually look at a live application. So first of all, let's look at some of the new views that we have. So if you've upgraded to SpiraPlan from, say, SpiraTest or Team, you should be familiar with this. You will now see that what used to be at the top here was a system administrator view. It has now been replaced by the enterprise view. And if you don't see the enterprise view, it means you haven't got that portfolio viewer flag turned on. And that's the reason. Similarly, if you've migrated from, say, SpiraTest or Team, you will see all these products like ERP financials, company website. You will see all of those and the programs they belong to, like corporate systems. They will all be grouped into what's called the no portfolio container. And that's where everything goes that's not in a portfolio. So the first thing you'll want to do is go into administration. You'll see that this new section that says view edit portfolios. And before today's demo, I went ahead and did this. I went in and created a new portfolio. And I added some of my programs to that portfolio. So when you go into the portfolio view, I created this new sample portfolio. And in it, I could move 2 of my sample programs, my default program, my sample program, into that. And when I did that, it now appears right here. And if you go to any of the programs, let's say sample program, you can change its portfolio just by going to the drop down and saying core services sample portfolio. If you don't have a portfolio and you leave it as none, then it will live in the default portfolio. I don't do that right now. Okay, so that's how you would organize the items here. And it is a 3-level hierarchy: portfolio, which is the sort of the icon with lots of hexagons, program with the 3 hexagons, product with the 1 hexagon. And we use those icons consistently throughout the application now. But I want to see everything. So let's start with the enterprise view. So the enterprise view is new, and that will let you see a top-down view of my entire Spira instance. So I can see my requirements completion. So across all my programs, products, portfolios, whatever, I'm 27% done with my requirements. That means for all my releases and sprints that are actively open, 27% of my requirements have been done. And if I want a bit more detail, I can look here on the right and see, well, in actual fact, 24% of my core services requirements are done, but 59% of my sample portfolio requirements are done. So I'm further along, I'm more completed in one portfolio than the other, okay? And you can hover the mouse over to see the numbers. You can also change it from percentages to raw numbers. That means it's 55 actual requirements versus 55% versus 24%. On the left-hand side, you see the schedule. That shows you, am I behind or ahead of schedule? So in this case, I've got 24% of my requirements done, but 55% of my time is done. So that's not good. So that's why it's gone red. If the schedule was less than 24, it would, for example, you would see it be on schedule or maybe even ahead of schedule. And the legend is right here as to what you'll see. Similarly, if you scroll down here, you can see the relative size of the 2 portfolios. If there's more than 2, obviously it makes the donut chart bigger. And that's important because sometimes you have a situation where, like in this case, the core services is, wow, almost 10 times bigger than the sample portfolio. So the fact that the sample portfolio is so much further ahead in progress is much less weighted than the core services. So that's why I'm still only 27% in aggregate. The other thing you can see at the enterprise level is the risk management. So I can see that I have these 5 open risks organized by exposure. So I haven't got to drill down into every single product. I have a nice top-down risk view I can see, which is nice. And then the other thing is if I'm using continuous integration tools like Jenkins or TeamCity or Azure DevOps pipelines, you can see all the active releases and sprints, and you can see all the active builds and whether they passed or failed on each one. So we have this new view and these new widgets to make things easier. If we want to drill down, we can go to let's say, look at core services. That's now the portfolio dashboard. So you now have the portfolio dashboard right here. There are no risks in this portfolio. That's why it's empty. There are no builds. And you can see there are 2 actual programs. And you can now see by program what's going on. And if I go in here, I believe I can maximize this. Yeah. And that way I can even see the relative sizes too. So I can see that these 2, the corporate systems program is 40% complete, and the sales and marketing is 15% complete, and the schedules are both overdue in both cases. You can also see things like recent builds if there are any. And the other thing I didn't mention is you can also see the workspaces in the schedule widget. So all the views have a schedule widget, so you can drill down from the enterprise view to the program view, the portfolio views, to the product view, to the release view, even to the sprint view if there are sprints, and you can see what's ahead and what's behind. You can see right here that this color bar is the progress complete. So for example, this dark section shows that this corporate systems is about a third complete, the ERP financials is about 2/3, this ERP is about 1/4. So you can see graphically how far along and what's done right here. And this schedule view is available in all the levels. So if I started at the enterprise and work my way down, there is this schedule view in each of the different levels. So this is our portfolio dashboard. Again, completed the portfolio and then completion and schedule for each of the programs in the portfolio. Let's look at another program. Let's look at the sample program. Now this is now because we're at the program level now, we have a few more graphs and charts. We still have our overall completion, which is right here. This program is now 59% complete, but also now some of the old metrics are in place, like the requirements test coverage, test status, defect aging, recent builds. We've also got a new widget, which is our test summary, and that combines elements from some of the other widgets into a simple view. So you can now see for every product in this portfolio, in this program, what's the requirements test coverage, what's the test status, and what's the defect counts. And we've actually had these for a while, and these comes from the 3 or 4 different widgets that you have elsewhere. But we found having them on one line for one product actually gives a lot more new meaning to it. So I can see for every single product, what's the test status, what's the requirements test coverage, what's the defects, and I can see relative to each other, which is doing well, which is doing badly, which ones do I have to investigate. This is the testing view. We have a development view where you can see the builds, the tasks, the issues. So there's again on the schedule. So we have different views of the program which show different widgets, and there is of course in the general view which looks more like the portfolio view, which has more of the completion widgets and less of the testing ones. So right now we've got a mixture of widgets on all 3 of the dashboards. As we add more widgets to the program view, we'll eventually have more widgets that are only on one of the 3. So we do have some items that are repeated across the 3, but all 3 of these views will be built out more in future versions as well. So that's the program view. And then lastly, if you go to a product level, we'll jump into this product. You can see the dashboards at the product level also have these new widgets that let you see completion percentage. So if I go to general, you'll see it right here. My total completion, my requirements completion, my risk summary, right here. So we've integrated these new widgets directly onto all of the different boards, all the different dashboards that we had. Enterprise, program, portfolio, product, and then of course, even by release, because you can still filter by release. So that's some of the dashboards. If we now want to talk about the planning boards, let's look at that next. So the planning boards we have, for example, if you go into the planning board, you can see at a product level, we have a planning board, which we've had for a while, but we also do have the program planning board. So let's go into our sample program, and we now have a program planning board. So you can see for any given product and program, what's going on. So let's look at the program backlog. So that's our program backlog. You can view by priority or by status. All these are my user stories. Or I can look by all products and then view it by product. So I can see what's scheduled for each one. And if I change to a different program, let's say I look at the corporate systems, you can do the planning. Here's what's in my ERP financials. Here's what's in my human resources. And you can then drill down to just one product. You can also view it by status or priority. And you can reprioritize across the different products. So we've got lots of different views at a program level. We've also improved the planning board. If I go over here within the products too. So if I go to the planning board in my product, so we're now going down to a product level planning board. Previously, we had the backlog view, which if you've used before, you could view by component and by epic. And we've added a new expand all option, which makes it easier to see what's going on, like that. These are my stories in each of my components. Same thing by epic. This is my backlog. These are the ones that are not yet planned. But once I decided to look at like the all releases or each of my releases and sprints, I couldn't get a sprint backlog or a release backlog organized by epic, but now I can. So if I go to all releases, or let's say release 1, I can now view that by epic as well. So you can now see these are my epics, these are my stories, and if you want to see how far along they are, what the progress is, just choose detail view, and you'll see the progress bars, see what's done, and see what's not done. And you can even turn on the tasks and the test cases if you want to see the test completion and the task progress graphically. So that's some of the new functionality we have in terms of the visibility. We've also changed some of the viewing. So if you view these by release or by sprint, say by sprint, we've now changed the progress bars at the release level and the sprint level to use the new requirements completion percentage metaphor. So instead of relying on the tasks, we can now see that graphically by percentage complete of my requirements for each release or sprint. Another thing we've done is we've also added the ability to plan by points as well as plan by hours. This particular board is set up to plan by points. You can see we've got the number of points, number that are being used, number remaining. If you go to the planning options, we've added new options here where you can actually say plan by hours. If you choose plan by hours, instead of it showing points, it will show by hours. And so depending on your methodology, if you're doing a pure Agile methodology, you'll want to just use the points. Estimate your user stories in points and then set the number of points, maximum planned points in that release. If you're doing a methodology where you've got a mixture of requirements and stories, but also tasks and defects, which are measured in hours, you might want to use the plan by hours option that we're now showing. In this option, the user stories and their story points are converted into hours by using the team velocity, and we then add on the tasks, the test cases, and the incidents to give you a total effort. And you can then compare that to the amount of time in that release based on the dates and number of people. So it depends if you're using a purely point-based methodology, size of a sprint, 20 points, how many points are left, or you need a more sophisticated, more data-driven, more quantitative approach. We do now support both, so you can toggle between them. And every given product in the system can run in one or other mode, and that's all done through the planning options. The other thing you'll see on the planning options also, which I mentioned in the PowerPoint, is the new functionality around work limits. I've set this up ahead of time. These are my WIP limits. So if I go back into planning board and I choose the view, let me get rid of some of these things. Let me go into the view by status. You will now see there is our work in progress. And I'm allowed to have one in developed, one in progress, as many as I want in tested, as many as I want in completed. So if I drag one of these over to this one, let go, hit refresh. Oh, now they're both in trouble. I'll put it back, refresh. There we go. So as you exceed the limits, it's going to highlight in the system for you. So that's some of the new work in progress limits. So that's the requirements management. That's the planning functionality. Also, as well as the boards, we've also added in, as I mentioned, if we go over here, the let's go to releases in the product. We've also added a Gantt chart view, as well as on the dashboard. If you go to, say, releases, we've always had this grid view of releases, which shows you the release hierarchy. You can now see the percentage complete as a new column. Before we had test coverage only in task progress. Now you can see a simple percentage complete for each release or sprint. But we've also got the same thing in a Gantt chart view like this, which is nice. See all my releases, see the sprints. The colored bar moves from left to right if it's completed. And we've also got a PERT chart / hierarchical view. So you can see all the releases and sprints graphically. That's new. That's new we added in SpiraPlan 6.5. And if you go into tasks, there's also a task view right here, where you can see the tasks in a board view like this. Is your sort of classic Scrum board. You can also go over here, see the same tasks in a grid view. But now we've added a task Gantt chart view as well, a bit like the one we saw for releases, but it lets you go down one level lower and not just see the releases and the sprints, but you can also see the tasks. So that's the task view there. Next thing is risk management. So let's jump over to risks. Risk management is right here. We've had risks in the tool for a few versions now, but if you're coming from SpiraTest or SpiraTeam, you would have seen them. Risks are tracked with a probability and impact and exposure. If I click on a risk, you can see it's got a probability value that's customizable, a impact value. We put these together. That gives us our exposure score. You can write the risk. Right now, this is an open risk. It's gone through its life cycle from being identified, analyzed, and now it's in the open status. It's been treated. With these mitigations. These are my 3 mitigations. Here's my comments that go with it. And as well as that, you can also go into the task section and you can see the tasks to basically mitigate and carry out, looking at that risk. And so every mitigation will usually have at least one task. You can also associate this risk to other parts of the system. So I can go into associations and I might want to link this to a particular requirement. So that's fine. We'll go in here and we can say this risk is now linked. This risk relates to that requirement. And you can run reports in the system to show risk traceability, risk detail reports as well. There we go. And that's a bidirectional link. If you go to the requirement, you'll see the risks. If you go to the risks, you'll see the requirement. So that's the risk management functionality. And just to show you that on the dashboard, if you go back to your dashboard view at the product level, you do have that risk cube and that risk register. So that is the demo of SpiraPlan, the new functionality around the new widgets, the programs, the portfolios that we have. We talked about the new dashboards, the new Gantt chart views, the new PERT chart view, also the risk management functionality, which may be new to you. So with that, we're going to move into the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write it into the questions section. And I'd be happy to answer the question. If it's something that I can just answer, if I can show it to you, I'll show it to you. If it's future functionality, I can suggest what we might be doing. All is good. So just type your answer or your question, sorry, into the question answer window. I'm going to do that. And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, if there are any, just want to make a shout out to our Inflectra Con conference. If you are interested in coming to that, it is going to be in October. If you go to Inflectra Con, it is going to have lots of great talks on all the new functionality, both the current functionality and all the new functionality. We've got lots of great speakers, so do check out Inflectra Con. Here's some of the great speakers we have. We've got world-class speakers for you. Some of our great partners and sponsors are going to be here. Shout out to some of them. So if you're on the call today, and the program is going to be run over multiple time zones. So we have a global set of customers. So we're going to have a global virtual conference. We got the first round of talks every day for 4 days from 8 a.m. in the morning Eastern time to 1 till 2 p.m. And we repeat the exact same set of talks from 6 p.m. Eastern to midnight Eastern, and there'll be recorded talks with live Q&A. It's going to be a great way to learn about both Inflectra, SpiraTeam, SpiraPlan, SpiraTest, and Rapise, and CurrentDesk, Remote Launch, Taravault, all of our products. We also have a partner summit. We've also got the Inflectra in real life talks where you'll be able to see how you can use our products for Agile, for different industries, different methodologies, performance testing, all those good things. And then the thought leadership track is going to give you access to some of the world's best speakers in testing, Agile, and DevOps, all within the same conference. So it's a great 4 days. We hope you could attend. So while I've been talking about that, let's see if we have any questions coming in. 1 second. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. If you do have any questions that we couldn't answer today or you didn't get a chance to ask them, please reach out to myself. You can reach out to Jessica Moore, our Customer Success Manager. You can also contact us through Sales Channel, through our support desk. Also, if you're not a customer of ours and you just came to this webinar, you can write on our YouTube channel. We're on social media. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Instagram. However you want to get hold of us, we're here to answer any questions you have and let you know anything that you might have missed. So thanks again. Have a great long weekend, and a copy of this presentation and this talk will be on our YouTube channel sometime next week. So thanks again.